Welcome to the complete guide to mastering Albedo in Genshin Impact. Albedo is a brand new Geo character that specializes in AoE damage, both based off of his offensive as well as his defensive stats. On top of that, he offers a wide range of support defensive utility to help your character survive and deal additional damage in your team. Albedo's key skill is his elemental skill, Biogenesis Solar Isotoma. Upon activation, Albedo will create a Solar Isotoma field using alchemy, which will do AoE geo damage upon activation for a small amount. During the duration of the Solar Isotoma field, any enemy who is hit by any character, whether it is Albedo or another team member, will pulse for a one-time AoE geo damage based off of his defense. This can occur once every 2 seconds. As this damage is geo damage, any enemies afflicted by any other elemental trait will also generate a crystallization crystal, allowing you to pick the crystal up and absorb said elemental damage. In addition to these stated effects, the Solar Isotoma, when stood on, will become an elevated platform which will allow you to dodge either enemy attacks or perform a plunging attack off of the platform for increased damage. Albedo's first ascension, Calcite Might, will increase the damage that the Solar Isotoma Transient Blossom Geo Pulse damage does by an additional 25% to any enemy whose HP is below 50%. Albedo's Elemental Burst, the Rite of Progeniture Tectonic Tide, is an exceptionally low-costed and low cooldown skill, costs 40 energy crystals, and has a cooldown of 12 seconds. When you activate Rite of Progeniture Tectonic Tide, Albedo will burst forth AoE damage in front of him, dealing a large proportion of the initial damage to enemies inside his range. In addition to that, any enemies caught in the Solar Isotoma field have the chance to be hit by 7 additional Fatal Blossoms that are generated within said field that will then burst forward for AoE geo damage. All damage dealt by his Elemental Burst is based off of his offensive stats. Albedo's general playstyle will be comprised of supporting your teammates off the battlefield while they are within the Solar Isotoma field, coming forth to replant the Solar Isotoma field for that extended duration and activate his Elemental Burst for a large amount of damage. Upon activation of his Elemental Burst, once you have his second ascension, Homuncular Nature, using his Elemental Burst increases the elemental mastery of all nearby party members by 125 for 10 seconds. This will increase the effects of elemental reactions such as Superconductor and mainly and most notably Melt, as well as Vaporize. Albedo's first constellation is Flower of Eden, which will give him some energy regeneration anytime a Transient Blossom pulse of AoE damage is procced inside of his Solar Isotoma field, allowing you slightly quicker access to his Elemental Burst. The second constellation is the opening of the Phanerozoic, which will allow Albedo to be granted stacking stacks of Fatal Reckoning. These stacks will stack up to 4 times and will increase the damage of his Elemental Burst based off up to 120% of his defense at maximum stacks. These stacks are then consumed upon the activation of his Elemental Burst, increasing damage of the burst by his defense. His fourth ascension is the Descent of Divinity, allowing the Solar Isotoma platform to increase damage of plunging attacks by 30% for any active party members within the Solar Isotoma field, followed by his final constellation, Dusk of Purification, will increase any character shielded within the Solar Isotoma field's damage by 17%. When looking to gear your Albedo out in the weapon slot, look no farther than the Festering Desire, a brand new limited weapon available in the event The Chalk Prince and the Dragon, starring Albedo. This sword offers you energy recharge as its primary stat, which will give you quicker access to Albedo's Elemental Burst. But that is not all. The ability on the sword, Undying Admiration, increases both the elemental skill damage and elemental skill critical hit chance of the equipped character. This not only increases the summon damage of the Solar Isotoma, but the elemental geo pulse damage when activated by striking an enemy within the Solar Isotoma field. This gives Albedo a very well balanced elemental skill damage increase while he is off the field as your teammates are striking enemies within his generated Solar Isotoma field, but also increases the amount of times you can Elemental Burst Albedo's Elemental Burst. However, if you do have access to the brand new 5-star base sword, the Summit Shaper, this sword will allow you to get the most amount of maximum damage from Albedo's Elemental Burst at the cost of energy recharge and the quicker access to said Elemental Burst. This is because the Summit Shaper gives a large amount of attack percent bonuses, and it being a 5-star sword has a higher base attack than the Festering Desire. Albedo has two very powerful artifact sets that greatly complement his playstyle. The first set is the Archaic Petra set, the 2-piece bonus giving Albedo 15% increased geo damage, which will increase the damage of both his elemental skill procs, and his elemental burst. The 4-piece is a very powerful supportive aspect, increasing the damage of your party members. Upon obtaining an elemental shard created through the crystallization reaction, which Albedo is very strong at doing, all party members that match the crystallization reaction elemental crystal gain a 35% elemental damage bonus for 10 seconds. You can only have one elemental damage bonus at a time. In essence, if you generate a pyro crystallization reaction, you will get pyro damage increase. If you generate a cryo damage reaction, you will get cryo damage increase. The second set is the Noblest Oblige set. The 2-piece for this set increases Albedo's elemental burst damage by 20%, and the 4-piece will increase the attack of all party members by 20% for 12 seconds. As Albedo's elemental burst cooldown is also 12 seconds, if you have enough energy recharge, you can have this up nearly full time. This is an exceptionally powerful and easier to use set than the Archaic Petra set, as you don't have to worry about generating and picking up the correct elemental crystals. On top of that, you can also combine the Royal Flora in the Archaic Petra set, where 2 pieces of each of them to grant Albedo 15% geo damage and 20% elemental burst damage. You will lose the supportive 4 pieces bonuses for wearing either of these sets, as you will only be wearing 2 of each, but Albedo's own personal damage will be slightly increased in comparison to wearing a full set of either the Noblest Oblige or the Archaic Petra set. The stats you are looking for on Albedo's artifacts are critical hit chance, critical hit damage, attack percent, energy recharge, and a smidgen of defense percent for the substat rolls on Albedo's artifacts. For main stat, you are looking for a critical hit chance circlet, a geo elemental damage goblet, and then either an attack percent or a defense percent sands. If you're looking to get a smidgen more of damage out of the procs from his elemental skill 2-second pulses while he's an inactive member of your party to increase his support damage, go for the defense percent sands. However, if you're looking to maximize the amount of damage that you're doing with your elemental burst, go for an attack percent sands. As Albedo's normal attack combo string is exceptionally low multiplier rate compared to other sword users in the game, he is not really fit to be your main damage dealing carry. However, being a sword user, you must know that while using Albedo, you can animation cancel nearly any of his normal combat strings into his charge attack, allowing you to get at least a little bit of extra damage out while using Albedo. You can cancel any attack in his normal attack string into the charge attack except for his final attack in the normal attack string. Albedo is a geo elemental support specialist that shines the greatest while off of the battlefield, allowing his teammates to make full use of the field generated by his elemental skill, the Solar Isotoma. This field allows Albedo to generate free damage from the Solar Isotoma procs that happens once every 2 seconds. In addition to that, these procs can generate elemental shield crystals through the geo crystallization reaction, providing both free damage and free defensive support utility, while Albedo isn't even present on the battlefield, only for Albedo to show up once his elemental burst is full to provide a large amount of burst damage through his elemental burst, only to take off into the backfield once again to allow his teammates to make use of his elemental skill, Solar Isotoma. While not a direct hyper carry for your team, if you master the playstyle of Albedo, you will become more sturdy against elemental damage and increase your damage in AoE situations with Albedo present in your back line. Thank you guys once again for spending that time here on the video. If you want to see more Genshin Impact content and coverage like this one, make sure you go ahead, hit the subscribe button, and like for more content. Until then, guys, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.